the real deal.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Real Deal Airsoft. My name is Jake, one of your favorite YouTube airsoft technicians. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button, because if you're someone who likes airsoft and likes learning and having fun, then this is the channel for you, 100%. Let's hop right into this video, Airsoft Tech Q&A. If you didn't know, I own my own store, link in the description below. A bunch of really cool goodies in there. But now's the time for you guys, the community, to pick my brain, because I'm that guy who's building all these really cool replicas. So we're gonna hop right into the Airsoft Tech question and answer. We have a bunch of comments. I may not be able to get through all of them, but whenever you see the Q&A on the YouTube community, make sure you drop that comment down there. So in the next video, I can answer something that you guys are curious about. Let's hop right into our first question. Shout out to Killer B. He's asking about dry firing. He's saying, is dry firing bad for your airsoft gun? He's heard that it is and it isn't, and he wants the Real Deal to put it to bed. So this is the story. If you upgrade your AEG and you have a Real Deal build, meaning that it's completely solid and it's built for durability, there's really no downside in dry firing the AEG. Granted, if you have a stock platform with a really weak gearbox, for example, Lancer or King Arms, and you're just dry firing the heck out of that, I wouldn't recommend that, because there's a chance that the gearbox would break. But the real answer to this is, if you're upgrading your airsoft replica, you should upgrade the gearbox shell, right? So let's answer this question with the presumption that you upgraded your AEG and it's solid, meaning you chose a good base, it's high performance, it has a nice gearbox such as a Lonex gearbox, G&G, VFC, Crytac, KWA, or Retro Arms. If it has any of those gearboxes, then the answer is no, it is not bad to dry fire your AEG. Nothing's going to break and nothing's going to crack. All the parts should be able to handle it. The only difference between dry firing your AEG and shooting with BBs is that there's a tad bit of resistance, meaning that the piston isn't just flying forward at full speed, that there is a bit of resistance. So the solution to that is, if you're dry firing, make sure it's unloaded, but put your finger at the end and just plug the barrel. Just plug the barrel with your finger. It'll sound different too when you fire it. That is similar resistance that a BB would offer. So for you guys, if you want to dry fire your AEG for a video or for testing purposes, just put your finger over the tip of the barrel. That'll offer resistance within the hop-up unit and the inner barrel and the compression system, and you're good to go. So the answer is no. It's not bad for your AEG. It's really not. And think about it. If something fails from dry firing, it was going to fail eventually. Question number 2, which is from Jonathan Naive. If I butchered your name, my bad. How often should you open your gearbox to clean, maintain, or lube the parts inside? So I'm going to give you 2 different answers. The first answer is for single sector gear builds. Second answer for DSG builds. For single sector gear builds, honestly, I would say every 3 months you can open it up. Maybe even every 6 months you can open it up. Heck, you should only open it up realistically if you have a problem. If you're an average player. But if you're someone who likes the sport, watches my videos, why not open it after you play, just to see how things are and make sure nothing came loose. But as a general rule of thumb, if you have a single sector gear build for general maintenance, every 3 to 6 months, I would consider cracking it open, relubricating it, especially if the AEG has been sitting for a while, then definitely open it up and just relubricate. So every 3 to 6 months. So pretty much 2-3 times a year. All right, so about 2-3 times a year. Now, if you have a DSG and you built it, or a technician, let's say you built it and it's not under warranty from a technician, like my pre-builds are, and you built this thing, no warranty, me personally, after every weekend, let's say you play on the weekend, I would open it up, you know? After that weekend, especially if you built it, that means you're the tech, which means that the more you open it, the more familiar you will be with the system. So generally speaking, I'll open it up after I play. Let's say I play 4 sessions, right? Like 4 different weeks. I'll open it up once after every session. And pretty much by the 4th session, if there's no wear, no screws came out, and it's pretty rock solid, for the DSG, almost the same thing. About every 3 months, I would open it up. I open it up just for inspection purposes and just because I enjoy doing that, and I always change parts out. But for the DSG, every 3 months. For the SSG, you can get away with every 6 months. It's kind of like half. Question number 3, Royce Dahl. What do you do to get an AEG to feed reliably at a high RPS while maintaining optimal joule output? So I'm going to answer this question based on efficiency. So I'm not going to tell you something that's inefficient that's going to burn your battery out. High RPS, so you'd run 13-to-1 ratio gears, single sector gear. The single sector gear offers you full volume. which means that you can push out high FPS. So you combine 13 to 1s with an M130 spring, you will get around 29 to 28 RPS with my motor, the Real Deal Golden Boy motor, and you'll be clocking like 440 RPS, 450 RPS. You might even have to short stroke or go down a spring. So with an M130 spring, 13 to 1 ratio gears, Real Deal motor, and a MOSFET, and a good compression system, which means maybe you have a max Maple Leaf max hop unit, Maple Leaf rubber, Real Deal piston, Real Deal cylinder head, max nozzle, then you will be cranking out around 30 RPS, give or take, at 450 FPS. So that I would say 13 to 1 ratio gears, Real Deal motor, and whatever MOSFET. That's high RPS and high FPS as well, like really high FPS. Air volume's great, outdoor build. Boom. Really good question. FSUA Gaming, the debate on having Sorbo pads to dampen the piston head and help reduce stress on the gearbox versus washers to help AOE. Which would you do for DSG? Would you use both? And would the washer add more weight that could crack the gearbox? Okay, so this is the debate of Sorbo pads versus AOE washers. If you notice on my website, link in the description below, I do not retail Sorbo pads, and I do retail steel AOE washers. Why? The downside with Sorbo pads is this. You never know your true AOE, angle of engagement. You never know. Why? Because that pad squishes. So when you're measuring in the gearbox and you're calculating everything and you're adjusting everything, it's not precise, meaning that when that piston's flying forward at full speed with the pressure of the spring propelling it forward and it slams into that Sorbo pad, it's squishing moving forward. So where your piston engages with the tooth is actually more forward than where you think. So you could run into the situation of improper engagement. And it's just an old technology, it's an old thing. And when you use a Sorbo pad, you cannot use an AOE washer because that's already putting it back too far. So what I do is something that is absolute. And when I tell you I've been building AEGs for over a decade now, when you upgrade your gearbox shell, if you're doing something that's high performance, I highly recommend you to upgrade your gearbox shell. Once it's upgraded, you have a retro arms gearbox shell. As long as you're not using a max cylinder head, you're never going to crack it, ever. So every single one of my DSGs, every single one of my builds, 100% of the work that comes out of my shop does not have a Sorbo pad, and it has basically a Real Deal cylinder head, which has its own pad on the back. It's a soft pad on the back of that, which doesn't have that much flex. Plus the Real Deal piston, which comes pre-assembled with that AOE washer. Now the reason why I do that is because the AOE is the AOE. It is what it is. There's no games, there's no variants, there's no variables, right? When I put that in the gearbox and I see how the teeth are aligning, I know that under high stress, high performance, high cycle rates, it's going to engage the teeth the exact same way every single time.
You're goddamn right.
And if you're looking to upgrade your piston, link in the description below. Real Deal Airsoft has it for you. So that's my answer for DSG, for SSG. We don't use Sorbo pads anymore. It's an old tech. I mean, I'm sure you could get away with it, but it's not the proper way to correct your angle of engagement. That's more so to dampen the blow, but you shouldn't be using crap gearboxes. In the beginning of the video, I tell you which shells are the most reliable. And if you're using my cylinder head and steel AOE washers in those gearbox shells, you'll never have to worry. I got my personal, the prototype Goblin series, which is like what the pre-built line of Real Deal AEGs is based off of. That thing has over 100,000 rounds through it. Over 100K BBs have been fired through that thing. I'd say a good 30,000 of those BBs have been dry fired, and the thing's minty. Mint. Nothing wrong with it. Absolutely brand new. Like the internals are beautiful. There's no problems at all. So with that being said, the need for the Sorbo pad is no longer existent. Because if this thing's not cracking after 100K rounds of abuse, it never will. Shout out to Jay Feliciano, my boy. Shout out to you, man. He's definitely a real dealer, a Real Deal supporter. I've seen him place some orders on the website, and he's just a good friend and always asks me for advice. And he's also building a lot of good stuff, and he's an amazing tech. Love you, Jay. Just shouting you out right now. What are your thoughts on CZI motors? How do they align with SHS gears? Great question. Back in the day, I'd say about 5 to 6 years ago, that was the bee's knees. Like that was the motor to go to. It's 22 TPA, and it would just provide that torque. However, the magnets are really low quality, and the pinion teeth are very fat, meaning it does not mesh well with SHS. And honestly, it always sounds like Dookie because of that pinion gear. The quality of the brushes are very poor, and the strength of the magnets are very weak. They are neo magnets, but they're at the lower. They are the cheapest quality magnets that you can possibly have. Speaking about magnets in the Real Deal Airsoft line of motors, we have N35 SH rated magnets, super high temperature rated magnets. When you look at them, they're also a lot shinier than these crap magnets. And honestly, it used to be a cheap fix, but the performance is just very lackluster. Even on 13:1 ratio gears, which is considered high speed with that motor, you're not getting 30 RPS. You're probably getting like 25. And it's okay for semi, but honestly, it's old technology. I don't use them at all. Never. I only use Real Deal motors now. CZI motors are good on a budget, but for $30 more, you can get something that offers more than twice the value. Meaning that the performance that you'll squeeze out of this motor and the amount of life that it'll last you and the amount of, it's just way better options nowadays. So I don't use CZI motors. They don't really mesh well with SHS gears. Shout out to Derek Roback. What's your favorite Dino chicken nugget shape? Honestly, just a dinosaur guy with like 2 legs and the tail. I usually split it. That's messed up, but it's all good. No one can get enough of them chicken nuggets, boys. Shout out to Jay again. I'm planning on getting a Retro Arms hop-up unit. What are your thoughts on the Retro Arms hop-up unit you sell on your website? What's the best barrel bucking nub combo for it? There's a bunch of different routes you can go. We do carry the Retro Arm hop units on our website. They do come with 2 different arms. They have like an M-type arm, which you can put your own nub, which offers you up to a wide variety of options there. And then they have their hard, flat nub, similar to Max. A good route to go is you can get an M-type nub, or you can just rock the Maple Leaf Omega hop tensioner in that with the Maple Leaf bucking, and you're good to go. Like, you're really good to go. That's what I do. When I run that unit, I usually put a Omega hop tensioner inside with a little M-type arm, and that's what I run with barrel, CZI, amazing barrel, PDI, CZI. I mean, as long as it's steel and Type Or, I'm getting away from 6.01s. I'm using more 6.02s nowadays, and I'm seeing a lot more consistency with that, shot to shot, and also the barrel doesn't get as dirty. So that's a little bit of information there. Shout out to Keithan Blackmon. Can you run a reliable DSG without upgrading the gearbox shell? As long as it's one of those brands that I mentioned before, yes. What should I do if I cannot get my gearbox to sound quiet with brand new, dry, just shimmed gears? So, dry gears are going to sound a little bit more loud and crunchy because there's no lubrication in them. Don't worry about how loud they sound when you're spinning them inside the gearbox. More so pay attention to the resistance, making sure that no gear is too tight, that it's moving smoothly and operating like well. Don't worry about the audio, because sometimes audio can be distorted on social media. Don't worry about that. Just make sure you have the correct tolerance, the right play, and that when you look through the gearbox, you see if there's like a little gap between the gears, about 1 millimeter or so. And as long as it's moving smoothly and you can go back and forth like this and all the gears are working together, there's nothing to worry about. Don't worry about the sound. 8-tooth DSG with Warhead 35K motor. What battery would you use? Tried 11.1, 45 to 90, I'm assuming C discharge. It shredded 2 bevels and 2 pistons. Also, do you ship items to Europe, not UK? Yes, we do ship items to Europe all day, every day. We're an international type company out here, so boom. 8-tooth DSG with Warhead 35K. I don't use Warhead motors no more because they're absolutely obnoxious. The thing that I can recommend is if your piston blew out like upon the first couple shots, it's because your sector gear was too far away from your piston when you started up. So meaning that maximum velocity just did that to your piston rack. So what I do is on Warheads, before I slide the motor grip on, right, it's all assembled in the receiver. Before I slide the motor grip on, I actually cycle the bevel gear a little bit to cycle the sector gear closer to the piston. So when it starts up, it doesn't have that space to go. It's merely like almost resting on it already. But what I would say is to get some real deal performance airsoft piston assemblies, because the racks are pre-bonded. They have a fat pickup tooth and a lot of support in the piston body to support that rack. Run an 11.1 Titan battery. You don't need the crazy discharge, all right? And with your bevel, it means that it wasn't shimmed properly. If you're shredding bevels, it means that it's not shimmed properly. And me personally, like, Warhead pinions are dookie. They're like a soft material. Like they're really not the bee's knees. If you can replace it with an SHS pinion, or just run real deal motors. But then I see you're chasing like an RPS 35K with the 8-tooth DSG. I'm gonna basically break down to you the bevel to pinion shimming real quick. All right, I'm trying to do this quick. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You're here, you're watching, you might as well get some knowledge, right? Boom. Bevel to pinion. You're gonna do bevel to gearbox shimming. You're gonna put a total of 0.2 shims on the flat side of the bevel. Keep adding shims to the top side of the bevel or bottom. Add shims to the part of the bevel where the teeth are facing. I'm gonna call that the top. That's what I'm calling it for now. I'm calling the bottom the flat side with no teeth. All right. 0.2 on the flat side. Keep adding shims to the top, close the gearbox until you remove that axial play. That's bevel to gearbox, right? Next step is motor height, half shell method, flat side down, teeth side up, slide that motor grip on with the motor inside, adjust your motor height, lock that, bang. Step number 3 is the bevel to pinion. You're gonna take that out, close both gearbox shells together, sandwich, bevel inside, boom. Slide that thing on, motor grip and motor. Click, 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 do the little bevel window cutout. Click, click, click. Oh, it's too tight. Need to lower it. Shift the gear, shift the shim from the bottom of the gear to the top. Oh, it's too loose. Do the opposite. Shift it from the top to the bottom so you get that little 1 millimeter. Click, click, click. Boom, bang, powder, third. You heard. You know how to shim like the real deal. Your shit will never strip out ever again. Isaac Hewitt. What is the best way to get continuous tech work? Content creation. No one's gonna know what you can do unless you tell them. No one's gonna be able to see what you can do unless you show them. So my word of advice is to show people what you can do. Offer as much value as you can. And the Real Deal Airsoft will be looking for technicians in the future as we're expanding. There's only so much we could do out here. You could reach out and collaborate with existing tech companies, take on work, make a name for yourself. But show people what you could do and tell people what you could do. Make sure they could hear and see your capabilities, my friend. Make a YouTube. Shout out to Real Deal. Got you. Can you recommend me a gearbox setup for a 33K brushless motor 400 FPS? Yeah. 16:1 or 13:1 ratio gears, Jetron MOVset or Gate Titan MOVset because they both have brushless motor mode in the software, which is a necessity. I hate Warhead, but good luck, my man. FLT steel bushings, epoxy them to the shell, Real Deal piston, SHS tappet plate, pretty much the Real Deal Airsoft SSG bundle kit. Will Spencer, why does it always rain on me? Because maybe you don't have a Real Deal build and everyone's clapping your cheeks, boy. Start building. Bobby Joe, how to fix feeding problem. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel called How to Tune an Adjustable Nozzle. I'll link that video right here. You'll get the answers in that video. Shout out to JHQ Tech. When are you gonna come play with me? Soon, my brother. The stars will align. Just invite me. I'm really busy. Just send me messages and remind me when you're playing. I'll pull up. And the last question for today, shout out to Steven Dews, a young member out here. I have a Crytek LMG coming and I keep telling myself to leave it stock. It's a Crytek, but I want a DSG it so bad. So my question is, what gear will work for it? I know Cryteks are picky when it comes to gears, and I have a MOSFET for it, a max hop up, and a Mr. Hop bucking and barrel for it already. So the answer is really simple, in all honesty. You want to do a couple things. Number one, you want to get a Real Deal Airsoft Performance piston assembly, because your piston has plastic teeth. The second thing you want to do is just get a simple SHS DSG gear by itself. You use the Crytek bevel and spur, and you got a DSG. Run an M150 spring in that thing, and you're going to have to modify your tappet plate because Crytek is different from SHS. The tolerance is a little bit different. SHS may be a little too fat. You have to sand it down, so just use the stock Crytek plate and use Real Deal Airsoft DSG tappet springs, the super tappet springs, and you got an LMG DSG, my man, 100%. And you'll be really happy with it. It'll be absolutely insane, but the rate of fire might be too fast. You know, it really might be too fast. And if you want better trigger response out the box, upgrade to a Real Deal Airsoft Golden Boy 2.0 motor. So long story short, all you really need to do to DSG your Crytek LMG is SHS DSG gear, M150 spring, modify your tappet plate, and Real Deal Super Tappet springs, and you're pretty much good to go. Shout out to Steven Dews. You're the man. He's a YouTube member. Love you, bro. I'm actually gonna squeeze one more question into here. If I didn't answer your question on the next Q&A, drop that question again. I apologize. There's only so many we could do at one time. Cameron Marshmallow. Will a higher C rating and MAH make my RPS higher on my DSG? Yeah, so you have the potential. So there's a potential to a certain limit. Like for example, you're not going to get a higher RPS running a 90C battery compared to a 50C. The system is only going to take what's necessary. So the system will only draw from the battery what's necessary to make the system work. What I mean by that is you may not see a difference between a 50C and a 90C battery. Like I said, the system is only going to draw as much as it needs. It's not going to just draw more than it needs. And just so what I'm saying is, in theory, a higher C could yield higher RPS. But there's like a point of no return. Like there's a point of diminishing returns, meaning like past 50C, it's never going to draw that much. It's never going to pull that level of amps through the battery at that rate. Like it's only going to pull what it needs. So if you're comparing like a Titan 16C battery to a 50C LiPo, the 50C LiPo will get you the higher RPS. That's really it. You know what I mean? So that's a good question. And Nick B, cylinder differences in applications. The cylinder, the answer is different for SSG and DSG. For a DSG, the cylinder doesn't matter. Like for a DSG, you want like a full cylinder. But then again, if you're running a 3/4 ported cylinder, which is usually stock, the piston doesn't even travel past that port. So it's as if it's a full cylinder. So for a DSG, you want as much air volume as possible. But for an SSG, it's literally based on the barrel. So the rule of thumb is like, if you have anywhere between 1 to 200 millimeters, you kind of want like a 50% port. Anything after that up till around 365 is around 3/4 port. Then anything 365 and over into the 400 millimeter range, you can start going into full cylinder. And you'll know you have a cylinder air volume problem when your BBs are just dipping out of your barrel. Like they're not even, like, you know you have a cylinder problem when you have an FPS issue or the BBs are just rolling out of the barrel. That's when you know you have an issue. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the Real Deal Q&A. I apologize if I didn't get to any of your questions. If I missed your question, make sure on the next Q&A post, you drop that comment. This way I can get to your question, hopefully help you guys out a little bit more. I'm Jake, and until next time, stay clapping cheeks in the field.
The real deal.